Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. It is the slogan of Attila the Hun and of Genghis Khan. It is the slogan of Alexander, and it was the slogan of all the competent generals and emperors of Rome. Divide and conquer. Every general learns to divide the enemy so that he can dominate the battlefield. You break the lines of supply so the fighting men are divided from their food and ammunition. You break the lines of communication so that units operating in the field cannot receive orders from their commanders. You drive a wedge between two regiments, create a diversion which causes a commander to separate his forces. Unity, every officer knows, is the worst characteristic of any enemy. So would it surprise you to hear that all these military strategies have been used against the United States for 40 years? Our unity has been taken away from us. We have been divided. We are awaiting our conquerors. It has been by education and it has been by suggestion. The people who benefit are petty demagogues. They become mayors and ward heelers, aldermen and city council members, ministers and members of the school board, professors with tenure, congressmen, sometimes senators. Through their speeches, intended to mobilize small communities, one group of Americans is taught to fear and hate another group of Americans. A black alderman or minister announces that all black people are still the economic slaves of the white race. An ex-convict, formerly a member of a white racist prison gang, opens up a website to educate teenage boys in the philosophy and belief system of Adolf Hitler. Women are told all men in the world, half the population of the planet, are engaged in a vast conspiracy to keep every woman chained to the stove, barefoot and pregnant, churning out babies till the day she dies. White families are told that an outrageously expensive gated community of large, cheaply built mansions is the only place their children can be safe from the crime emanating from the black neighborhoods of the inner city. The strategies of these demagogues are simple. Instill fear in a target group of people and then ask them for money. Ask them for their support. Sell them something to take the fear away. Unfortunately, whether they give money or not, the fear remains. When someone successfully installs fear in your mind, fear of some population of enemies in your own country, it raises the level of adrenaline for a few minutes, and you never forget it. And when you hear the same message repeated by others who have learned to raise money in the same way, you get confirmation. You get another burst of fear, another burst of adrenaline. You say, yes, it must be true. These Americans are my enemies, and I have no defense against them. I now ask all Americans to be on the lookout for the message of fear. These are the people dividing America, hoping only to attract some money, but the lines of division they lay down between us cannot be erased. In the 4 decades since the 60s, those lines have become canyons, too wide to bridge. They make us dysfunctional. They make us incompatible. When we hear and see someone making a public statement about someone who is dangerous, it mobilizes us. Then they ask us for money, and we donate, hoping the problem will go away. But demagogues never spend the money on problems that affect us. They spend the money on problems that affect them, like boredom. I am bored, they say, with last year's furniture. So I'll make a speech and I'll spread the infection of fear among one group of Americans, and I will point the finger of blame at another group of Americans. Then I will ask for donations and buy some new furniture. This is why the war against drugs has never been won. This is why the laws controlling illegal aliens in this country have never been enforced. This is why the American marriage is lucky to survive to its 7th year. Our demagogues have us divided and conquered. Many of us are so dysfunctional with our supposed enemies, we don't even need to hear the speech. We've been indoctrinated. over the course of a lifetime to identify our enemies by their obvious characteristics. He's not my color, okay, he must be my enemy. Once upon a time, Protestant Americans were taught to perceive Catholic Americans as the enemy. Not any longer. Today, people with a religion are taught to perceive people who don't have a religion as the enemy. 50 years ago, Christians would have said, "The poor boy don't go to church. It's our duty to teach him about Jesus." Today, Christians will say, "He don't go to church, don't let him get near me. I'm trying to keep my clothes clean for the rapture." And the ultimate separation of Americans from other Americans, the ultimate division which makes it possible for us to be conquered, is the separation of 60% of our manufacturing sector from our service sector in only 27 years. If the service sector cannot serve the manufacturers who have closed their doors in the United States, they have lost a customer base equal to 30% of the United States economy. China, Mexico, and the other cheap labor pits of the world now benefit from the presence of those jobs and factories. 80% of business owners and workers in the United States are dependent upon service sector earnings. And because the service sector is overcrowded and over-competitive with a customer base 30% smaller than it should be, all earnings are reduced nationwide. 73% of Americans are high school graduates earning pitiful wages in the service sector. And the service sector, 80% of our economy, is absolutely dependent on somebody walking in the door with money to spend. Once an American service sector employee pays for his rent, his food, and his gas, he does not have money. And that's why the service sector is dying. And that simple fact is bringing about the ultimate separation of Americans from the American dollar. We have been divided and conquered. We have been separated from each other, and we have been separated from our birthright. We are the inventors and producers and innovators and manufacturers of the world, and we have been separated from the machine shops and the tool and die plants and the stamping and forming mills and the presses and the foundries where once we created new ideas for the world to see and marvel. Today, we have been separated from the coal and the iron and the steel that made us strong and self-reliant. And now we are dependent upon our thinly disguised enemies and our treacherous billionaires to sell us the things we need, because we are no longer allowed to make them with our strong American hands. We are no longer independent. No longer are we strong. We are divided and fear and hate each other, and we can be conquered. People tell me I should not be saying that. But what are you going to do if an army of Muslims decided to invade Florida or New Jersey as they once invaded Spain and Italy? Are you going to stand on the beach and throw Chinese consumer products at them? This is your country. The next time you hear of someone identifying a group of fellow Americans as the enemy, you write them a letter, or you stand up and say to him, to his face, "Pal, you are making the United States a house divided, and that makes you the enemy of every American." Standing right beside you will be Nathan Hale, Thomas Jefferson, Tom Paine, John Paul Jones, Andy Jackson, Davy Crockett, Alexander Hamilton, James Buchanan, Abraham Lincoln. No matter how stoned you were when you went to history class, I know you've heard of some of these guys. And everyone else who ever pointed out, united we stand. Divided, we are nothing more than a very large third world country with a midget army. I am Quixote.